Good evening, everyone, or depending on where you are, good morning or good afternoon. My name is Buki, and the name of my channel is the Good Eve channel, which you already know, I guess, if you're here with me today. I wanted to discuss overcoming financial setbacks. So making the headlines this last few weeks has been yet another alleged failed investment scheme in which a company took money from investors and then lent it allegedly to third parties and made a spread in between, promising returns sometimes monthly of up to 10% to their investors. And investors collected returns for a while. But once again, it was unsustained, and a lot of people now are in limbo. Now, I say alleged because, well, the truth is the founders of the business are yet to come forward and give, a statement to their investors and let them know whether indeed they will get their money back or not. But there have been several schemes. We all heard about MMM, which devastated a lot of people financially just a few years ago, many of whom are still in the process of recovering, some who did not recover. So I just wanted us to talk today a little bit about how can you overcome financial setbacks. Now, the worst thing that can happen in a scenario like this, if it affects you, is for you to blame yourself. I know it's going to sound counterintuitive because people will say, well, you should have known that such a return was unrealistic. That's true. Maybe you should have known. Maybe it was possible that it was. But for instance, in the case of this so-called alleged collapse that has just taken place, I've heard and it's been said that even some banks, well-respected banks and financial institutions, had also invested with this company. So one would imagine that a bank of that magnitude, of such magnitude, and that has so much experience would have done their own due diligence. So if they could put their funds in such an entity, why wouldn't smaller investors who don't have the budget, who don't have the access, not invest in such an asset? Now, we need to remember that with all investments, there's always a risk. Even when you run a business on your own, you run a business today and you decide to, let's say, sell tires, and you bring them out in the country at a certain price, and then for whatever reason, 5 other importers of tires flood the market with cheaper, substandard tires, and all of a sudden your tires seem really expensive. What do? You can lose money on that deal or on that shipment because you need to move the shipment out and drive volume, and you don't want to get your funds stuck. So you might actually sell eventually at a loss. So even legitimate business people who are running a business do experience financial setbacks from time to time. So I'm not going to talk about in this video, I'm not going to come here and condemn you. I'm not even going to talk about how to tell if an investment is sound or not. And I may address that in another video. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who are going to blame you and flog you for what has happened. What I want to talk about is it has happened. How do you move on from it? So the first thing I'd like to say is there's no shame in financial loss. It's the worst thing that can happen to you is if you even now conceal it. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that you should go to the street and start begging and appealing to everybody to help you. That's not what I'm talking about. But open up to people who you see that maybe you feel are more savvy, that have a bit more knowledge than you do. Why? Because they can perhaps give you some advice. Maybe they're even in the same boat. So maybe they can give you some insights. Maybe there's some way you can recoup a bit of it, and they may have more information than you. The worst thing you can do in this time is limit the kind of access to information. Information is critical and key when you find yourself in this scenario. The next thing I would say is, if you suspect that fraud is involved, so it's not that someone invested, got in a shipment, and the business failed or had setbacks for legitimate reasons. If you believe that there is fraud or theft involved, report it to the authorities. Write petitions to the relevant authorities. Get documentation in place that validates your evidence. So let's take the recent alleged incident that has taken place, and I'm being very careful for legal reasons, where they allege that over 20 billion has, been lost, and there are allegations that it's fraudulent. It's very important for the investors that are involved in that, if they believe that fraud is involved, they need to actually go to EFCC, they need to go to the police, they need to go to different bodies, SEC, where this company had a registration and were licensed, and actually formally complain. All these complaints on social media and in newspapers are not formal complaints. SEC may decide to be proactive and go and follow up with what they've heard, but they may not also. They're not bound by gossip. So you need to go to the relevant authorities and begin to lodge complaints. It's only through that way that it now becomes true that they're being, at least the charges can be brought and they can be found. But if individuals are just saying, it becomes a civil matter, which is, I gave you money, you didn't give it back to me. I'm not denying that you gave me money, but I can't give it back to you now. So if you believe that fraud is involved, please ensure that you go to the relevant agencies. This is a really good time to talk to a lawyer or talk to your lawyer. They can advise you and let you know all the places that you need to go and all the agencies you need to notify. Because I'm sure it's not just SEC, and it's not just the police, and it's not just EFCC. The second thing is not procedural. It's more psychological. You need to grieve the loss of this asset. You need to accept that a loss has taken place. Now, you may be able to recoup the loss later, even though in most cases that's highly unlikely. And so it's important, so that you don't continue to put good money after bad, that you take the time, take a moment to grieve, acknowledge that it's lost, and grieve the loss. The dreams you had for that money, the hopes you had for that money, the plans you had for it, that investment, you need to grieve. The blood, sweat, and tears that you put into it, you need to grieve. Release the sadness and tension. And it's important that when you grieve, you do it in positive ways, practical, and most importantly, healthy ways. Why do I say this? So don't grieve and get drunk and just drink and drink and drink, because there are ways that you grieve that makes the problem worse. Why is it important to grieve? Grieve, if you're a person of faith, speak with your maker. If you're a Christian, speak with God, with Jesus. If you're a Muslim, get closer to Allah. If you're Buddhist, meditate. It's important that you take out the time to have the discipline. It's actually a discipline to grieve properly. Go through that cycle, understand the cycle. There will be denial, there will be anger, there will be bargaining, there will be acceptance, there will be depression in the process of grieving. Go through that process and understand, journal, write about it. If you need to cry, go into your room, cry, shed tears, talk to your support system. Let them give you comfort as you come out of it. Grieving process is so important, because if you don't take the time to do it properly, there's a very strong likelihood that you'll just say, if you, for instance, say, no, I can't accept that I've lost this money, I have to make it back. I have to make it back as fast as possible. The likelihood is that you'll go into something that's even worse, that's even more risky, and you'll lose your money again. And then you've now compounded your financial setback. The third point I wanted to talk about, looking at my notes, is I want you to take stock of your financial situation. When it comes to that, how significant was this loss in the greater scheme of things? Was it 10% of your net worth? Was it 10% of your salary? Was it your salary for the year that you had been saving up? Was it all your savings? take stock of the impact of this loss. Even if it's everything you had saved in your entire life till this point. Take stock of your ability to earn income. Do you still have a good job? Do you still have a job? Do you still have the ability to take on additional, side businesses and side projects that can begin to build up your reserves again? As long as you have life, there is hope. You must not lose hope. So you really need to take stock of your situation. Sometimes you find the people who cry the most in these type of scenarios actually have a lot of things going for them. Maybe they have an asset, a property, or they have unutilized assets. They have a vehicle in their house that's damaged. They could either sell off or repair and put to use for a season to help build up those reserves again. Take a look around your life, your home, your house. There's so many opportunities that if you take stock properly, you may be able to take a look and see how you can begin to lay out a plan to take the steps to overcome this financial setback. Another thing that's important about taking stock is looking at your budget. So depending on the impact of this financial setback, there may be certain luxuries you're used to that you may have to cut back on. And the sooner that you have a view and a perspective about what to do, the better for you. So if you realize that, this thing, it's affected, what I lost is the cost of my summer travel budget, for instance. Do a staycation. And then you're actually neutral. Yes, you'll miss going to New York, and you'll miss going to Milan, or you'll miss going to go and visit your family in the East. But guess what? Take that hit, one and done. Send whatever you can send home to say, I'll come next year. If it's a trip, create a Milan or an Italian day. Take your kids for pizza and pasta. Be creative about it, but cut the losses. So stop the bleeding is what I'm basically trying to say. You need to look at your budget and make adjustments very quickly to manage your expenditures and your costs, to also begin to compensate for the loss. Another thing I want to talk about is you need to review your financial goals. So I'm sure with this investment or with this business or with this, financial vehicle that you invested in, you had plans. If it goes this way for 12 months, I'll hit this number, and then 2 years, I'll hit this number, and now it's gone. You're not going to hit the number for 6 months. You're not going to hit the number for 1 year. You're not going to hit the number for 24 months. So you need to review your financial plan and your goals. There's no point in setting a goal in which this financial vehicle that has just failed, for lack of a better word, is now gone, and you're still binding yourself mentally, psychologically, emotionally, and practically to a goal that will not be achievable. It will just cause further depression, and it's just basically denial. Adjust your goals. Even for now, I need to look for another vehicle. We need to rebuild the reserves. Adjust your plan so that you can see a plan that looks like more where you are, and it also helps you to think, how can I get where I want to be? So a financial plan at this point becomes very important. A revised financial plan. Revise the amounts and revise the timelines. It doesn't mean if your goal is I want to make 50 million Naira by the 2030, and this vehicle would have gotten you there by 2025. Review your timelines. Review the amount and begin to work. It doesn't mean you can't make it. It might just take longer, but review and adjust. Finally, get professional help. Get professional legal help. Get professional financial help. Talk to a professional financial advisor from a reputable firm that's at least been running successfully for 20 years. At this point, you need that kind of help. If it's a business, talk to a good accountant. They can tell you where you went wrong. Maybe the numbers, the assumptions you had from the beginning were not good. Maybe you spent too much in certain areas you didn't realize. Speak to a technical professional in that space who can tell you, oh no, these type of providers are so expensive, they'll eat away at your bottom line. Speak to professionals at this stage. If you are part of those associations, go to your association meetings, ask other people who are in the same line of business that you are. They can provide so much insight for free. They will share their experiences, and you may just realize that 3 or 4 of these things are what affected you. Fundamentally, it may be a good business, but 1 or 2 levers were applied wrongly and it derailed the business. Finally, speak to mental health professionals too. I know as Nigerians and Black people in general, we don't believe in psychologists and psychiatrists. I know, but when something like this happens, it's not just your pastor that can help you. Sometimes you need a professional who can let you know and give you the tools you need to remain mentally strong and sound, because a financial setback can be devastating to your mind and your spirit. I do hope that you will take on some of these tips that I've shared, and it will help you to overcome your financial setback. I want you to know that so long as you're alive and you have breath, even if you don't have good health, there is hope, and you must not lose hope. To everybody who's lost money in this last 1 week, I really just want to send my well wishes to you, and I want to pray and hope that you don't lose hope, and you learn from this, and you heal from this, and you overcome. This is Buki for Good Eve. Have a good evening.